Welcome back to Prison Professors. My name is Michael Santos, and I work together with Justin Paperny and Sean Hopwood. Our mission and goal is to try and help individuals who are going into the criminal justice system get the very best outcome. And in the previous episode, you heard from our friend Mario Hernandez, who told us his powerful story about how the work that he did resulted in him getting a sentence of 2 years versus a potential sentence of life in prison. So this is not something that is for everyone. It is for individuals who are ready to do the work. And Mario spoke about the intense amount of introspection and work that he did to prepare himself for sentencing, all with the effort of helping the judge and those who are going to have some influence on his life, including the probation officer, the U.S. attorney, prison officials, the probation officer who will guide him when he comes home. All of those people have an enormous amount of influence over Mario, but what Mario did is he took the initiative to begin sowing seeds that will influence how they judge him. In this episode, number 2, we're going to go for about another 20 minutes, and we're going to talk about what were the influences that initially brought a guy like Mario into the system. So Mario, I want to ask you now to help our audience understand who you are as a human being, because you're not really a criminal-minded guy. You're a guy who, because of circumstances, came into the system. Walk us through how you got there. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Tijuana. I was born in San Diego, San Diego, California, U.S., and grew up in Tijuana, Mexico. I'm pretty much the norm of people from the area. Born in San Diego or raised in Tijuana, you really are a bicultural person. It's the most visited city in the world on a daily basis, and a lot of things happen in TJ San Diego.
So you grew up in Tijuana. What was your educational background and the early career decisions that you made?
I grew up in my parents were very strict. Growing up, I grew up in a house where there was physical and verbal abuse. If not on a daily basis, very often, 3-4 times a week at least. And studied in Tijuana.
What did you study in Tijuana?
I'm sorry?
What did you study? You said you studied in Tijuana. What did you study?
I started in Tijuana, junior high, high school, everything, all the way through high school.
And your studies, what was your career ambitions when you went through school?
For some reason, when I was 4, I started singing, and through all my schooling, I sang. So by the time I was 18, I wanted to study acting and music. Uh-huh. And one way or the other, even though I didn't have the information people grew up having in the U.S., all the possibilities of going to this and that university, the loans and this and that, I managed to get myself scholarships in Monterrey, Mexico, and Nuevo León, and I went to study acting to Monterrey, against everybody's will, against everybody's thought of what the best thing was for me, but I did, and I started a career as an actor.
So as an actor, what type of an actor? Were you on television? Were you on stage? What was the sweet spot for you as you developed this career as an actor?
My objective was television and film, but in Mexico, it's not necessarily it wasn't exactly what I was looking for, but I have an accent and I grew up in Tijuana. Because I had been singing all my life, I started doing musical theater. And
could you give us some insight on some of the productions that you worked on through the course of your career?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Gospel is a beautiful play. I worked all my way up to working with the best company called Ocesa in Mexico City. That's the best musical theater company. And I did Jesus Christ Superstar, Men of La Mancha. I did Starlight Express with them. And then I managed to, after 9/11, things got really rough in Mexico too. And I went to LA, auditioned in LA, and got Miss Saigon with Big League Theatricals from Broadway. And I practically stayed there for 4 years doing Miss Saigon, doing the role of Tui. I was supposed to be a Vietnamese, and although I am 6 feet tall and back then was 185 pounds, I was big, really big for Vietnamese, but they liked what they had. They liked the singer, the actor, and they overlooked that.
Uh-huh. So you had sounds like a pretty successful, charming career
Yes.
on Broadway and acting, but something transformed in your life. How long were you in that role, or did you move into other careers? Tell us a little bit about the evolution of your career.
So it was 10 years of a career practically. Usually it takes 20 years for a career to be solid. And that's what I've been, kind of doing my research on. It takes 5 years to start to really develop. 10 years, you really start to see something happening. And 20 years, you're solid. I was inside 10 years of my career. I was doing really, really good. But I had been married for around 10 or 11 years. Around the same time, I had been married. And my marriage was going through really, really tough times. You travel a lot as an actor. And I decided to take a sabbatical and try to fix things in my marriage. I had 2 kids, and I really wanted for that to work. So I took a sabbatical that turned into practically 10 years, the rest of my life, practically. And that's probably what got me to the next part of my story, what has me here. That wrong decision back then, you don't leave what you were born to do. You don't leave your essence. For whatever reason, I left believing in myself. I stopped believing in myself. And that pretty much brought me here in many ways.
So you stopped believing in yourself, and I think you got exposed to some opportunities that you seized. Can you walk us through what those opportunities were and how that eventually led to derailing the path of discipline and hard work as an actor? And I think that you were in sales for quite a while, working hard. All
Yes.
of these different, I would say, contributing roles in society resulted in you kind of diverting. Tell us a little bit about what brought that about.
So yeah, I started in car sales.
After you left Hollywood or Broadway.
Yes. After I left Broadway, I pretty much started in doing car sales, and I was good at it. I was good at it. I guess I don't know the acting or whatever. I was good. I was a good salesman. I was a good closer, and that pretty much got me to a pretty good point, earning money. But it wasn't me. It was totally against my beliefs. I was doing what everybody else was expecting me to do in reality. And within 10 years, around 45, 46, my marriage was worse than when I stopped working. My relationships weren't good with my family. And all of a sudden I turned back, and like Job's wife just, turned into salt. I mean, I just saw the people that I had been working on with Miss Saigon. All of the guys and girls that I was sharing the stage with were on Broadway. And we're at West End, London. I mean, we're having amazing careers. They were doing Les Mis. They were doing all these beautiful plays on Broadway, and I was selling cars in National City. Where nobody wants to go buy cars here in San Diego, practically. And the reason I had stopped doing that pretty much wasn't there anymore. So I found myself in a really bad situation psychologically and emotionally. And nobody was ready for that. Not my family, not my friends, not even me.
So it sounds like it's a career with aspirations of being an actor, trying to save your family and move into another career, which is auto sales. Do well financially, but when you start seeing your former colleagues on Broadway really doing well with more famous plays and more work, you began to kind of have a crisis. It sounds like you kind of went off, rethinking, what did I do and what am I going to do with the rest of my life?
That's right. I mean, all of a sudden, I'm practically getting a divorce. The main reason that I stopped doing this acting didn't work. So all of a sudden, I felt like a huge failure, you know. And one of the things I want to do in the future, and I already started, Michael, thanks to the work we've done. That's one of my objectives, and it's already rolling. I want to take this to other people. You know, I went through a midlife crisis. I like to call it midlife change, and all of a sudden, I started to evaluate my decisions, my past decisions, and where I was at the moment. And there was the need of making a change, and everybody resisted that change, you know.
So that's an important point, I think, for our audience to understand, is we're listening to a human story here. We're starting to see who Mario is as an individual. He's an individual that had aspirations of being a career as a professional actor, a professional entertainer, a professional singer. He worked really hard through college, got some roles, had a level of success over 10 years, but that came with a price. That price was hurt his family. His wife resented him being on the road all of the time. He missed his children. So to solve that problem, what does he do? He takes another job in car sales. Does okay in car sales. Does well for 10 years. Starts making some money. But when he looks back and sees his former colleagues now achieving stardom on some level, he begins to rethink, what did I do? How much did I give up? And it's in that moment that the crisis begins. Well, I would submit that anybody who's going through the criminal justice system has that same level of making decisions from a position of weakness. That's not what when we're at our strongest, when we're thinking, God, it should have been different. You know, I wish it were different. And when that happens, somebody puts another shiny object out there of something to do, whatever it is, whether it's a white collar type of crime and you get involved in fraud. It didn't start out that way, but circumstances changed and you made some bad decisions because you're in a weak state. In Mario's case, it was a different type of a crime, but it was the same principle of making decisions from a position of weakness rather than a position of strength. And when Mario tells that story in his own words, the world begins to look at him and saying, I guess I've been there. I've made some bad decisions myself during that position. And that's what really changed for him. In your case, Mario, you'd mentioned that it was involved in drug smuggling. Mm-hmm. Clearly, you were in your late 40s when this happened. This is not the pattern of your life, but rather this is some type of aberrant behavior. Mm-hmm. Walk us through what your role was in that offense.
Well, I mean, yeah, you just nailed it as usual. I was on my weakest point. The person that approached me knew where I was standing. My family had turned their back on me. I was going through a really, really bad divorce. I had lost my job as a salesman a couple of times. I mean, I had been jumping from one dealer to another, one car dealership to another. I was in really bad shape. And I mean, this person, I didn't know he did that when he approached me. I thought he sold cars too. And when he approached me, all of a sudden, I had the possibility, the opportunity to, and I justified it myself saying, you know what, you worked so hard all your life. This you will be making, you won't be doing anybody any harm because you won't be putting a gun to anybody's head to use this, and you're going to get back on track. It's enough for me to get back on track, and people owe it to me. That's how I convinced myself. And it just, all of a sudden, I was in a really bad spot, and somebody apparently had given me a hand, and I said yes. You know, I said yes. I didn't think too much about it. I just thought that would help me get out of the situation I was and back on track to maybe act again and get back to Broadway, Hollywood, whatever I was ready to be doing at that moment.
Again, the salient point is very clear. When we're making decisions from a position of weakness, we make bad decisions. Somebody can exploit us, tell us, don't worry, you can solve it some other type of way. And we begin to justify it in our mind. Maybe he's right. Nobody's going to get hurt from this. Nobody's going to know. And if I can just do it this one time, it's going to help me get to the next level and get back on track with my life. And so we begin to justify it. We have the opportunity presents itself for us to try and think, oh, here's going to be a Hail Mary that's going to get us out of this mess. It always it lets us into a deeper struggle. What we have to learn from Mario's story is that we can't keep repeating that. When we do get in trouble, we have got to define the best possible outcome. We've got to create a plan that will help us get from where we are to where we want to go. We have to realize that there are certain priorities that are going to take place, as he described in the previous interview. First, he started doing some research. Second, he realized that he needed somebody to guide him. Third, he made a commitment to doing the work that would help others see him for the individual that he had been for the first 47 years or so of his life, rather than the very small window of time that he crossed the line during a moment of weakness and made some bad decisions. And when, to the extent that he is able to make that communication to the judicial system, he gets a better outcome. And that's certainly what he experienced in getting a 2-year sentence rather than a potential sentence of multiple decades in prison. And I'm so happy that you've had the outcome that you were able to create, Mario. And I would like to move on to another episode right now where we're going to talk about what you're going to do going forward and what is the outcome of your life and all of this work that you have been doing to reconcile with society, to connect with your family. How is all of that going to play out over these next 24 months? But it's much more than that. What about 3 years after you get out? And where are you going to be 5 years after that? Because it's these decisions that you started making right now that are going to put you back into this sense of restoring confidence, getting your life back on track, changed plans, and moving in the right direction every single day. Does that sound okay?
Great. It sounds great. Yes.
Excellent. So we'll do one more interview. This is going to be episode number 3. Stick around. We're talking with Mario Hernandez, who has worked very closely with my partner, Justin Paperny, and Kathy Kaplan, and others on the Prison Professors team. He's the one who did all of the work, and because he did the work, he got the outcome that he wanted. We'll be back soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Bye.